The coffee maker wheezed its last breath at exactly 2:47 p.m., which Marcus Webb decided was a perfect metaphor for his entire existence on Station Meridian. He stared at the ancient machine with the exhausted resignation of someone who'd given up being surprised by mechanical failures 3 years ago. Could be worse, he muttered, reaching for the manual backup brewer that predated faster-than-light travel. Could be the refrigeration unit again. The cafe, generously named Webb's Corner, despite occupying a cramped space between a recycling depot and a pawn shop, hummed with the kind of Wednesday afternoon silence that made Marcus question his life choices. Not that he questioned them often anymore. Questioning led to remembering, and remembering led to the locked drawer in his apartment where he kept things that no longer existed. Things like ambition, purpose, a future that didn't taste like recycled air and old coffee grounds. He was elbow-deep in the coffee maker's corroded innards when the sensor chimed. Marcus didn't look up. The afternoon crowd on this level of the station consisted mainly of dock workers grabbing quick meals between shifts, and they knew to help themselves. "Be right with you," he called, wrestling with a particularly stubborn filter basket. Silence answered. Not the comfortable silence of a patient customer, but the held-breath quiet of someone trying very hard not to exist. Marcus's survival instincts, rusty but not entirely dead, prickled to attention. He straightened slowly, wiping grease-stained hands on his apron, and surveyed his domain through the reflection in the battered steel backsplash. The cafe was empty, or appeared to be. Then he saw her, a tiny figure crouched behind the dying fern near the entrance, moving with all the grace and subtlety of a cargo hauler trying to dock in a meteor storm. The child, he was fairly certain it was a child, though her violet skin and the silver streaks in her dark hair marked her as Calithian, had pressed herself flat against the floor. She was humming something under her breath, a tune that might have been recognizable if it weren't being murdered by enthusiasm. Marcus bit the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. In 3 years of running this miserable cafe, he'd dealt with drunk dock workers, aggressive station inspectors, and once, memorably, a Thraxian tourist who'd tried to pay with what turned out to be counterfeit credits. But he'd never been robbed by someone whose head barely reached the counter. He turned his back deliberately, making a show of organizing the clean mugs. "Sure is quiet in here," he announced to the empty room. "Good thing I'm too busy to notice. If anyone wanted to say, take that wrapped sandwich I left right on the edge of the counter." The humming intensified. In the steel's reflection, Marcus watched the tiny Calithian army crawl across 3 feet of open floor, leaving a trail in the dust he really should have cleaned last week. Or last month. Time had a way of blurring together when every day was identical. Small purple fingers appeared at the counter's edge, followed by an entire arm that swept across the surface like a tractor beam. The sandwich disappeared into miniature hands with impressive speed, though the maneuver also sent Marcus's carefully arranged condiment display cascading to the floor. "Got it," the child whispered in what she clearly believed was a quiet voice. Marcus studied a fascinating water stain on the ceiling, fighting to keep his expression neutral. The kid grabbed 2 packets of Terran chips and a juice box. Always. The same items he'd noticed over the past month, then scurried back toward the fern with her prizes clutched against her chest. A piece of paper fluttered onto the counter where the sandwich had been. The child placed it with the solemnity of someone defusing a bomb, then disappeared through the door before Marcus could turn around. He waited 30 seconds before retrieving the note. Written in crayon on the back of what looked like a math worksheet, it read, "Sorry for the stealing. Mama needs the food. We pay you soon, promise. Piper. This my name but secret name. Don't tell nobody." Marcus smoothed the paper carefully and added it to the collection in his register. 18 notes now, each one more creative than the last. He'd started finding them 5 weeks ago, always on Wednesdays, always around this time. The first few times, He genuinely thought he was losing inventory to a malfunctioning preservation unit. Then he'd reviewed the security footage. Watching that tiny purple girl attempt stealth was like watching a supernova try to be subtle. She announced her presence through sheer determination, crashed into furniture with reliable frequency, and left a trail of evidence that would make a forensics team weep with joy. She was, without question, the worst thief in the entire station. She was also the best part of Marcus's week. He'd started researching after the third robbery. Calithians from the gas giant Calith Prime, adapted to high-pressure atmospheres and complex atmospheric chemistry. Away from their homeworld, they needed specific enzyme combinations to synthesize essential proteins. The enzymes were hideously expensive to manufacture artificially. They were also, by what Marcus had initially thought was cosmic coincidence, present in processed human junk food. That sandwich he'd accidentally left out, fortified with vitamin supplements and the exact enzyme profile a young Calithian needed. The chips? Specially ordered from a supplier 3 sectors over because they had the right chemical composition. Even the juice was carefully selected. Marcus wasn't sure when he'd started preparing for the robberies. Somewhere between Note 7, "Sorry, Mama sick, food helps, you nice human," and Note 12, "Today I was super sneaky, you didn't see me at all, I am like a ghost but purple." He told himself it was good business practice. Couldn't have a starving kid on his conscience, even if she did destroy his carefully organized condiment display every single week. But late at night, in his apartment above the shop, Marcus knew the truth. For the first time in 3 years, he had something to look forward to. Someone who needed him, even if she didn't know it. A reason to get up that wasn't just habit and the vague sense that giving up would mean they'd won. The afternoon stretched into evening. Marcus served the dinner crowd, such as it was, with his usual efficiency. Dock workers came and went, nobody noticing or caring that the cafe owner had started smiling faintly while packaging tomorrow's special order. 2 sandwiches this time. Extra enzyme supplements. He'd noticed the portions getting smaller, the child taking less food despite leaving notes promising to eat lots. That meant someone else was eating the stolen meals, someone who needed them more. Mama, the notes always mentioned. Mama's sick. Mama says thank you. Mama promises we'll pay. Marcus wrapped the sandwiches in thermal packaging, added 2 juice boxes and 3 bags of chips. He placed everything at the very edge of the counter, positioned so even a terrible thief couldn't miss it. Then he added something new, a small bottle of Calithian mineral supplements, imported at costs that would make his accountant weep if he had one. The bottle was unmarked, anonymous, just another item that happened to be sitting on the counter, waiting to be stolen. That night, Marcus lay in his apartment staring at the blank ceiling and wondering when his life had become about enabling petty theft. The station's life support hummed its eternal song, a white noise that usually helped him sleep. Tonight, it just reminded him how far he was from anything real, anything that mattered. His apartment was sparse by necessity and preference. A bed, a table, a kitchenette he rarely used. And on the wall, carefully covered by a tarp, a painting that hadn't seen light in 3 years. Marcus didn't look at the painting anymore. Looking meant remembering who he used to be, and that person was dead, had to be dead. The alternative was acknowledging that he'd thrown away everything that made life worth living in exchange for this, a quiet cafe on a backwater station where his biggest excitement was a 7-year-old's terrible burglary attempts. His encrypted datapad chimed softly from the drawer where he kept it buried under old clothes and older regrets. Marcus ignored it. That pad connected to accounts that didn't exist, money that had never been stolen, a life that someone else had lived. Someone named Shadow Broker who'd made the mistake of thinking that stealing from monsters made him a hero instead of just another thief with delusions of grandeur. The pad chimed again. Then again. Marcus continued staring at the ceiling, counting. The recycling intervals of the station's air processors, 68 cycles per hour. He'd counted them so many times he could track time without checking a clock. Eventually, the chiming stopped. The money would still be there tomorrow. 73 million credits, give or take, sitting in accounts, so deeply hidden that even station security couldn't trace them. Blood money from corporations that had strip-mined entire planets, enslaved populations, and called it economic development. That money could buy a lot of enzyme supplements, could probably buy the entire production output of a pharmaceutical facility for a year, could definitely save one sick Calithian woman and her terrible thief of a daughter. But using that money meant questions, attention, the kind of scrutiny that made quiet cafe owners into yesterday's news because they were too busy being arrested to serve coffee. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to sleep, knowing he wouldn't. Tomorrow was Wednesday, 2:47 p.m., like clockwork. Like everything in his carefully constructed, painfully boring, wonderfully predictable life, a life that was about to get complicated.